Welcome to In Focus, where we go one-on-one with the Republican field of presidential candidates. I'm Tara Wall, your host. He's a United States Air Force veteran, a former farmer, and longest-serving governor of the Lone Star State. I sat down with Rick Perry to talk about why he wants your nomination for president and a few things you probably didn't know. And joining us on this episode of In Focus is Texas Governor Rick Perry. Thank you so much for joining us, Governor, for this edition of In Focus. All right, so usually we like to just dig in and get right to it. With the first question, I want to focus a little bit on your video you had on your website where you said it's time to do right and risk the consequences. Tell us how that relates to why you want to be president.
Well, that was an old Sam Houston quote, a Texan of some gravity, a president of the Republic of Texas, a United States senator, and then the governor of Texas. I think this is going to be a show me, don't tell me election. This is time after what have been 8 years of a young, inexperienced United States senator who's gotten us really off track in this country economically and then obviously in the foreign policy field. So it's going to be, what have you done? Don't just tell me what you do, but what have you done? And obviously, being the governor of the 12th largest economy in the world, from 2007 through 2014, we created 1.5 million jobs in the state of Texas, while the rest of the country lost 400,000 jobs. You know, as an individual who's worn the uniform of this country and been the commander-in-chief of the Texas National Guard, as we've dealt with hurricanes and the border crisis that we've had with Ebola, and then obviously seeing them sent off to combat regions in Afghanistan and Iraq, that I visited with them a number of times there. That type of executive leadership is priceless. And I think if ever there was a time in America's history that Americans are sitting back and going, we really need someone who has a record of success, then I'll lay mine out and suggest that it's as good as anybody that's going to be trying to be the next president of the United States.
And you also mentioned a number of issues as well. You go from border security, education, healthcare reform. Among all of those issues, what would you say is the biggest concern facing our country right now?
Yeah, and I think there are two things as I travel across the country that I hear. People are really concerned about the economy. Am I going to have a job? I mean, there's this real malaise that out there. People know that we're not doing anywhere near as well as what we can be. And then when they turn on their TVs and they see ISIS and they see the attacks on American soil, what happened in Tennessee, what happened in Texas, and they become very concerned about their security. They know that our southern border is not secure. So it's those two things, and working in concert, because frankly, we have the smallest military we've had since, or the Army, since 1940. People are really concerned about their security, not just at home, but also abroad, and they see what's going on. So those two things are inextricably intertwined. You cannot build a military back up unless you have an economic rebirth, if you will, growth in this country, and that's how it's going to happen. You're going to have to cut spending. Anybody that says you can't do it without cutting spending is just not telling you the truth. I know. I had to deal with cutting spending as the governor of that 12th largest economy in the world, and I did it a number of times, and the response from the people of the state of Texas was, you know, we believe in you. We believe that your regulatory climate is going to be one that's predictable, and we're going to grow and we're going to risk capital. And that's what we did. We went from a $10 billion shortfall in our budget in 2003 to 2 years later having an $8 billion surplus. We can do this in America. I mean, we did it before 1979. We saw a president who was hollowing out our military, had put America on a crash course from the standpoint of not being able to economically grow. Our people were hostage in Iran. But 10 years later, because we elected a president who believed in America, who inspired Americans, who let Americans keep more of what they work for, and we grew, and we saw the Berlin Wall fall and Soviet communism start to be defeated. We can do this again. We just need a leader who has faith in the American people, who has a vision and can implement it, who's done it before.
So it sounds like economy is job number one for you. You also, on your website, you have three words that essentially describe you: farmer, veteran, governor, in that order. A lot of people may or may not know about your background. I guess the biggest thing is that might be a lot of folks might be curious about is your background as a Republican. Talk to us a little bit about why or how you became a Republican.
Well, it goes all the way back to that dryland cotton farm I grew up on, in a house that didn't have running water. I mean, my parents were tenant farmers, and I grew up in that very, very, 16 miles from the closest place that had a post office in rural West Texas. I never met a Republican until I was up in my 20s. I mean, I went to Texas A&M and then went off to the Air Force and flew around the world, and I finally met some people that would admit to be a Republican while I was in the Air Force. And I came back home, and we saw that period of time when America was making a transition. They had seen this extraordinary person in 1976, my father, who was elected 7 times on the Democrat ticket as a county commissioner. He was really taken by Ronald Reagan. He really liked Ronald Reagan. And in the early 80s, he and I, sitting there at the table as we were getting ready to do our chores around the farm, we were talking about Ronald Reagan's belief system really fit our belief system. So that's when I made that transition in the mid-80s. And in 1989, I made the switch to the Republican Party. I'd been elected as a Democrat, just as Reagan had been elected as a Democrat, just as Phil Gramm had been elected as a Democrat. I was elected as a Democrat to the State House. I made both political parties incredibly happy the day I switched parties from the Democrat to the Republican Party in 1989.
And that might apply to our next question, which is, who would you say had the greatest influence on your life professionally?
Well, professionally, you got to remember, the one thing I was trained for in my entire life professionally was to be a pilot. And I had a young captain. His name is Terry Skodak. I still remember him today, still keep up with him. In T-38s, he taught me to be this very focused, disciplined individual. Flying supersonic trainers is not for the weak at heart. It's not for people who don't have that ability to really calculate, think on their feet, make split-second decisions. He taught me how to really be focused and disciplined. And I will always be beholding to that young captain who took this even younger lieutenant and trained him to be a highly professional pilot. Those lessons about focus, about discipline, served me well through the rest of my life.
Okay, and now tell us a little about, or tell me something that no one knows about you, or most people don't know about you. Just lighten it up a little bit.
Well, it's really interesting. Most people know, having been the governor of the 12th largest economy in the world for the last 14 years, what a great job Texas did on job creation, 1.5 million jobs that were created while the rest of the country lost 400,000. We talked about the great progress that Texas made in education. We went to, if you're African American or Hispanic, you live in the state that has the #1 high school graduation rate. I mean, it's just incredible gains. And most people know that. I try to remind folks of that on a regular basis. But, in a personal way, well, here's something. I'll bet there's not a handful of people that know that I got baptized in the same creek that Sam Houston got baptized in the 1850s.
Wow.
That
is something
that's a pretty small piece of trivia.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Governor, for joining us on this edition of In Focus, and we wish you lots of luck out there on the campaign trail.
God bless you.
I'm Tara Wall. Thank you for watching In Focus. You can check out the series at GOP.com.